Okay, we're going to take a few minutes off in this lecture, and we're going to discuss something intrinsic to the shakedown and debugging process, and that is troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is when something goes wrong, and you have to figure out what it is, why it is, and make it right. Everybody knows how to troubleshoot. They run at the problem and poke around until they find it, and usually waste a lot of time in the process because they have not been trained how to troubleshoot. Troubleshooting is a process. Learning how to troubleshoot will save you from making a couple of critical mistakes that waste a lot of time and plague engineers in the field. So let's talk about how to troubleshoot. To remember these steps, we have an acronym, RV-AIR. As long as you can remember RV-AIR, you can remember how to troubleshoot. The first step of troubleshooting is to recognize that there's a problem. Now that is the obvious and easy first step, because what happens is somebody comes running up to you and says, "Hey Paul, we have a problem. Our flow is not indicating on the HMI," or "the pump isn't starting when it's supposed to." They bring to you a problem, or you believe you see a problem. Either way, you recognize that something is apparently wrong. The next step is to verify. Now this might sound a lot like the first step. Wait, I thought we already determined there was a problem. Well, no. In the beginning, we determined that there was a report or a suspicion of a problem. The second step is where everybody goes wrong. And the second step is we have to verify that a problem actually exists. Every technician, every field engineer has done this at least once. Somebody tells us there's a problem, and we run out and start testing. We grab the meter, we grab the thermometer, we grab whatever equipment we need, and we start checking to see why this problem exists. And after 30 minutes or an hour, we go back and look and realize that problem was never there. The person that told us something wasn't displaying was looking at the wrong screen. The person that told us something wasn't coming on is the same person who didn't turn on the circuit breaker and said that they did. So I can't emphasize this enough. And if you ever forget this step and waste a bunch of time, it'll haunt you. Verify. Don't take anybody's word for it that the problem is real. If somebody calls you on the phone and tells you that there's a problem, ask them to pull out their cell phone and take a picture of the problem. If you can't see it, if you can't reproduce it, then you can't verify that problem, and you should not be going to the next step unless it's just absolutely impossible to get a verification. So please, verify that a problem is actually there and actually exists and is actually doing what was reported before you go to the next step. And that next step is analyze. Now we pull out our meters. Now we get our wiring diagrams and our program logic, and we get everything else in front of us, and we start analyzing this problem to figure out what's causing it, why it exists, what wires are crossed, what program logic is wrong, where do you have an XIC instead of an XIO. The next step after we analyze is to isolate. Too many people go straight from analysis to fixing the problem and walking away. What they fail to do is to isolate the problem. There is one specific thing that's wrong. We need to get it down to that one thing. It's one bit, it's one instruction, it's one wire, it's one component. Whatever that thing is, we need to isolate it. And at this stage, if possible, we need to determine what the root cause of the failure is. Now, if it's a programming error, we already know the root cause. The root cause is probably a programmer who didn't go through all of their debugging as thoroughly as they should have. But regardless, we need to isolate and get this down to a single thing that can be fixed. And once we've isolated that problem and we can point one finger at one specific thing, now is when we repair it. And even though this isn't a step of the established troubleshooting methodology, there is one last thing that you should do after you complete troubleshooting, and that is test. Go through and make absolutely sure not only did you fix the problem, but you also did not create any additional problems. So recognize the problem, verify that it actually exists, analyze the system until you are able to isolate the exact specific cause of the problem, and then repair it. And when you're done with all that, run this system, test it, do another full function test on everything even closely related to the problem that you fixed, and make sure that when you fixed one thing, you didn't cause 3 other problems. Do that, do it right, follow those steps, and you'll be one of the fastest troubleshooters out there, and you'll be everybody's hero anytime something goes wrong.